of the area would be that's required in order to sustain a population that's primarily based off the carnivore diet. So say, for example, if 1% of the population were to jump onto the carnivore diet, how much of our farmable land would that consume to sustain that 1%? What we found was for 1% of the population to be turned to carnivore, that would mean in Canada, that would lead to 3.7% of our farmable land being used for the carnivore diet folks. So in the US, that number is even worse, actually, because they have relatively less farmable land from what it seems. Or maybe it's not that, but it's their population, actually. So it's,
greater population.
Yeah, I think that's more so the population that's the biggest issue, is that they're, it's a whole order of magnitude greater than Canada. But if 1% of the population in the US was to become carnivore based, so again, strictly meat, no vegetables, no fruits, no carbs, no nothing, 6% of the land would need to be used up for growing this cattle, for growing the meat necessary. And then when we look at 10%, we have 37% respectively and 60%. So it's pretty crazy right from there, when we have, just something as small as 10% of the population becoming purely carnivore based. And, in the US, that's already 60% of the total land that's farmable will be used for that. And in Canada, 37%, so almost 40%. To me, those are huge numbers in terms of the land that's required in order to sustain this type of diet.
Yeah.
What do you think of that number there, Elliot?
Yeah, I mean, just on the surface there, you are seeing just how unsustainable this is. I mean, at 10%, you can't imagine 100% of people doing this. It's just not possible.
I mean, at 50%, we're already at 185% of the available land in Canada and 300% of the available farmable land in Canada. So all that to say that essentially we cannot afford to have a large portion of the population eating strictly meat. I guess that's essentially the conclusion that I'm sort of coming to.
Yeah, and we are looking at the worst case scenario. So, in the sense that we are looking just simply at beef, and they tend to be on terms of the land required to raise cattle and to slaughter them and all that.
Right. So beef is generally the worst in terms of the energy that's required per gram, in terms of the water that's consumed per gram. So this is really, the worst case scenario that we're looking at for our carnivore diet. If you were to, for example, have a carnivore diet strictly based off of chicken, then that would be a different story. Your relative impact in terms of the area that will be consumed, the farmable area that will be consumed, would be much lower.